The very short version is it's a process of very rapid visualization of images of things that you selfishly want. And you go through this list at an incredibly fast rate of speed. Takes a lot of practice, and this is going on now. I'm doing it right now. And so it's not a distraction from other things, but it sets up when people do this, weird stuff happens. That's all I can say. I've stuck people's head in EEGs and in functional MRIs, and there are measurable changes in the brain which are somewhat unique when this happens, and it's reliable. So we have a brain bias, so we have toys to measure brains, and I play with the toys, but maybe it's not the brain. Maybe the brain is an effect, not the cause. It's not producing the healing. Maybe when I do this cycling technique, it happens to the brain, but something else deeper, more fundamental is actually going on.
Welcome to Elevated Conversations. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks for the invite. Nice to meet you and all that.
Bill, a lot of our followers are often interested in healing themselves in some way, often emotionally, spiritually, maybe at a mental level, and of course, the other aspect of the being, the physical aspect. And you've worked with people and really helped to pioneer some amazing research into healing. What sort of areas do you work in, Bill?
I've done most of my research in cancer. So cancer just turns out to be a nice, simple model to study. And so, I mean, the short version is about 100 years ago, I was hanging out with a guy who was doing amazing healings. He fixed my back, and I'm a card-carrying skeptic, and he rudely put his hands on my back, and I haven't had a pain since. And so I was left with a decision. Do I make believe it didn't happen, or do I recognize that it happened and try to figure out what in heaven's name happened? So I watched a few hundred healings of various things and participated in a few hundred healings. And I came away after, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of healings with a couple of questions. One, are we ever going to learn anything doing this? And the answer was no. Because what would happen would somebody would come in, they'd have, whatever X condition they had, and it could have been mental, it could have been physical, it could have been spiritual, it could have been whatever. And they'd come in and we'd do some hocus pocus, and it would take any number of treatments to do the hocus pocus. I think that was a dance. Yeah, but they would do the hocus pocus, and they would leave better. And the question would be in my head, why? What? Are they deluding themselves? Is this power of suggestion? Is this all that kind of stuff? And again, I don't naturally come to this as a believer, so I tried to make the effect go away, and I couldn't do it. And then I looked at some of the anecdotes that we were looking at, and it turns out that some things were easier to do than others. This is only in hindsight. It turned out it was easier for us to take away something that was a problem than it was to stimulate something that's missing. So if you had a cancerous growth, it went away pretty quick. If you had Alzheimer's, which is basically crap on the brain, we took away the crap. If you had, various things, we could take the stuff away. If you were missing something, like type 1 diabetes, you're missing something. The pancreas isn't putting something out that it should. If you're talking about, I don't know, what else could there be? Parkinson's.
Yeah. What about joint pain, where the cartilage has gone on the knee or something and the bone on bone is rubbing?
Bone on bone rubbing, I don't think I ever came across that as a human case. I wouldn't put it as impossible, but it wouldn't be within the wheelhouse, the most common wheelhouse that you would do. But Parkinson's, for example, this guy couldn't really fix Parkinson's. He could reduce the symptoms, but they would either come back or it was unimpressive. Type 1 diabetes, same thing. The symptoms would improve, but didn't last. And I wasn't. Cancer was remarkable. So cancer, it depended on how aggressive the cancer was. A cancer that's very aggressive turns out is very simple to fix.
Oh.
Cancer which is not particularly aggressive is harder to fix. And it turns out that seems to be a pattern that nobody's been able to beat. I think that the energy from an aggressive cancer is what you're using. So if something comes in like a freight train, it leaves like a freight train. If something comes limping in, some weenie cancer that's low grade and all that kind of stuff, it limps out. But it fixes. And so I, once again, being a skeptic, said, I wonder what's going on. What can we do? And how do I learn? Was it so a patient comes in, they have X cancer, you do however many treatments you need, and the person doesn't have cancer anymore. Was it suggestion? Was it what people used to call placebo? Was it the grapefruit they had in the morning? Was it the vitamins they took? Was it and I couldn't unravel it. I just had a lot of people who didn't have cancer anymore. And what do you do with that? Well, what I did, and this is 95 years ago, what I did is I went into the lab. I said, not doing people anymore, going to do something that has no viable counter hypothesis. So we looked around, and with a buddy of mine, we said, let's see if we can do a foolproof test of cancer.
So by counter hypothesis, you mean, in other words, it's not like a human where it could be the psychological state of expectancy.
Mm.
They
I
want
mean, it could be all those things in a human.
This guy will make me well. So you decide to work with animals. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I decided to take it into the lab and work with animals. And I looked around and with some biologists, they said there's a very common biological model of mice that has 100% fatality in a month. No mouse, no matter what you do to it, you could heat it, you could freeze it, you could give it vitamins, you could give it, whatever you want to give it. 100% of them in over 2,000 published experiments, so we're not talking casual here. In over 2,000 published experiments, 100% of them die within a month.
Mm.
Nobody's ever been able to break the month boundary. So we said, perfect. Let's get a batch of mice and see what happens. So we got a batch of mice, did our hocus pocus, and mice were cured. I, of course, didn't believe it, so I started to do it again. Mice were cured. Still didn't believe it, so I said, this can't be. So I got only skeptical people who did not believe this stuff. And I said, would you be a volunteer healer? And they said, we don't believe in healing. I got people who couldn't spell healing. And I said, perfect. You can't spell healing. You don't believe in healing, and you think this is all crap. I said, you're a perfect candidate. So come on down. We're going to the lab, and I'm going to teach you a healing technique and see what happens. All the mice were cured. We did it a fourth time. We did it a fifth time. We did it a sixth time. We did it a seventh time. We did it. I just finished my 19th and 20th experiments at Tokyo University.
Wow.
Well, I'm not trying to see whether we can fix cancer. That's kind of a no-brainer at this point. It's rather, what is it? What's going on? What's the mechanism and all that? So I walked away from the humans because I couldn't learn. And I went into the lab, and with mice, I could learn. And we've done cell cultures, we spent a bunch of years, I think 97 years, in the lab looking at this stuff.
And there's
Wow.
this underlying idea that we're only picking up on a very small part of what's going on in the universe, right? We're seeing from red to violet, we're hearing 20 to 20,000 hertz, but there's all this other stuff going on that we miss, and people think if I can't see it, then it doesn't exist. So from this work, which must, but let's get to it, must be energetic. There must be an energetic exchange going on here, and the healers are affecting the energetic field. What are some of the best theories you guys have got now as to what's going on? Like, what's happening here?
Oh,
Why are the
I,
mice healing?
well, the first part of your statement question, there's more going on. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. What I've learned more than anything else in all of this stuff is humility, because I don't know. I don't really know what's going on. I know that I've never met anybody who knows what's going on. I've met a lot of people who say they know what's going on, but in about 5 minutes after talking to them, you can kind of rip apart their model. I don't have one. It's not like I know and you don't. I
Mm,
don't know anybody, including myself, who understands what's really going on.
mm,
It really is interesting. I know, no, I don't know. I'm usually wrong. And when I do an experiment, and in the rare times that I'm right, my hypothesis bears out. I don't believe me. And I certainly don't encourage other people to believe me. I just, here we go, try it for yourself,
mm.
see what happens. But yeah, it really is a mystery. I'm pretty confident, and probably wrong, but I'm pretty confident that there's no energy involved. So among the experiments that I do, and people call it energy healing, I understand that, but I don't think there's any energy involved. If I do an experiment with mice and I do whatever the thing I do, hands on or hands around or hands near or something like that, and we get whatever we get, and the mice get cured and all that kind of stuff. Well, then we move them across to Australia. What happens? The exact same thing. Now, what in heaven's name could do and not diminish from here to Australia? It can't be an energy, So if I shine a light and I start moving away, the light gets dimmer. And you need more energy to get that, the farther distance. If I shout, and I start shouting and move away, it gets dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, dimmer. But if I do healing, distance doesn't matter at all.
No.
So it can't be energy. Now, a reasonable person would say, okay, what is it? And I go, I don't know. It's not energy. It's probably information. But the question is, how does the information get from point A to point B? And I mean, there's a zillion problems here. How does it hit the target? So someone's in your place, you're in Australia, I'm in New York. There's a couple of kilometers between us, a couple of miles. What could go that far and hit the target and miss everything else?
Could the
So you
answer
set
be
up two
thought?
cages of mice.
Could it be thought?
Intention?
Well, certainly intention is there,
Mm,
but how does the intention translate to a viable, concrete, in your face outcome?
mm,
You put two cages of mice in Australia and say only heal the ones in this cage
mm.
and leave this cage alone, works fine.
Is
What
it
could go that far, spread out, and how in heaven's name does it hit a target?
so is it you're saying it's like maybe intelligence of intention and then the love from the heart creating this?
Ah, okay.
I was just suggesting. It's so
Yeah, that's
fascinating,
right.
isn't
But
it?
it really is a dilemma.
Mm,
It certainly can't be an energy as we understand it. And intention is certainly part of the equation someplace. If you put your hands around a cage of mice, you have intention.
mm.
You can't heal and not have intention. You can't try to heal and not have intention. So intention is there, but it doesn't solve the problem. How does intention manifest itself in the physical world, and how does it get from here to there? I mean, I have some wild speculation, but it's not particularly satisfying.
Mm.
Oh, I'd love to hear them.
And I love this fundamental idea that the universe is basically built on and made up of the same stuff, vibration. You don't like the word energy because we're using human connotations of energy, but from a perspective of vibration and the idea that everything in the universe has a resonance, you can think of that term sympathetic resonance. And people often get shown that, you know, when they bang the tuning fork and the one on the other side of the room automatically starts to resonate sympathetically with the other one. Twins are a great example. A twin might be in New York and the other twin's in Australia, right? And the one in Australia goes for a swim and scared of sharks. And the one in New York might get a feeling, I hope my brother or sister's okay.
Yeah.
Need to be careful. There's some
And
connection.
those anecdotes are all over the place,
Yeah.
and I think they're real. So I completely understand the phenomenon. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, I go bang on a tuning fork and the other fork is in the room. I get it. I have more difficulty trying to understand if the fork's in Australia. Because I can't hit it that hard.
Yeah.
And nobody between here and there, you know, again, a couple of miles, nobody between here and there
Get the activation.
get the activation, you know.
No.
So healing, another proposition that I could defend, you know, if we had enough time and you wanted to play in the lab, one thing I can defend is the activation. I mean, what makes it go? You know, you can talk again the intention, you can talk, but you can talk about resonance, and I'm a big believer in resonance. You can talk about frequency, and I've done a ton of studies on frequency using EEGs and EKGs and functional MRIs and all that kind of stuff. But you got to get the resonance has to connect somehow. What's the thing that connects? And you can say consciousness, but that doesn't help. It makes you comfortable, but it doesn't help really with mechanism of action.
Mm.
Yeah,
So
it's
isn't
really
it
a tough problem.
illusion, Bill? Is it an illusion that we're separate from one another?
Mm.
Could at a deeper level we all be connected to one another and we feel like we're individuals living our own life, but at a deeper level, we're actually all interconnected. And through this technique that you teach your healers, whatever it must be, the focusing of thought, there must be direct intention. Perhaps is some sort of creative visualization involved, something of that nature, where they send the thought to, it's got to be cage B and not A, because there would be specifics in there. Could that be possible?
Mm.
Oh, sure. I mean, sure, it's possible. Who am I to say what's not possible? You know, I'm the biggest nut job in the room, you know. So I have no basis to say that's not possible. I can just say, meh, you know, meh,
Yeah.
and shrug and go, I don't know, scratch your head and think about it for a while. Um, we can say we're connected. I think healing is a resonant connection, but it's not a field effect. So in some experiments, for example, we have a bunch of mice and you know they can many mice. We got a bunch of mice here and we got a bunch of mice that's someplace else in the building that's part of our experiment, but I don't know who they are, where they are, when they are. I don't know anything about them. They get cured too.
Mm.
You don't even do the healing on them. It's that I think they're resonantly connected or bonded to the treated mice.
Mm.
So I'll say yes to the connection. I'll say yes to the bonding, but that doesn't help me figure out what in heaven's name is going on,
Mm.
at least to my satisfaction.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I'm annoyed. I'm openly annoying about this stuff.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the energy healing method that you've come up with and created? I know that you teach many people this method.
Sure, and it's also published. If you go on my website, you know, it's not a secret, you know, so there's a lot of people who do it. Uh, the very short version and the real version takes a little longer to do. But the very short version is it's a process of very rapid visualization of images of things that you selfishly want. And you go through this list at an incredibly fast rate of speed. Takes a lot of practice, and this is going on now. I'm doing it right now, and so it's not a distraction from other things, but it sets up when people do this, weird stuff happens. That's all I can say. You know, I've stuck people's head in EEGs and in functional MRIs, and there are measurable changes in the brain, which are somewhat unique when this happens, and it's reliable.
Mm.
Now, I don't know why, here goes the skeptic in me, I don't know why the brain is necessary for healing. So we have a brain bias. So we have toys to measure brains, and I play with the toys. But maybe it's not the brain. Maybe the brain is an effect, not the cause.
The
Maybe what I'm
instrument.
looking at is not producing the healing. Maybe when I do this cycling technique, it happens to the brain, but something else deeper, more fundamental is actually going on. And why it's going on, I've only been doing this for 105 years, so I haven't come close to. Give me another 100 or so, and we'll come back and we'll talk.
We'll have it dialed in by then.
It's
We'll,
very
we'll have a
interesting.
talk. Yeah, same time in the year.
But that's very interesting method, Bill. These these things you want, this end result. Are they the end results for me or the end results for the mouse? Seeing the mouse run around, having a clean, healthy heart or lungs, or is it the end result for the mouse that the healer's focusing on, or
They're
for
not focusing on that at all.
or what was that term that focusing on
You
what they
can you
want?
can you can we've had student volunteers, inexperienced non-believers, student volunteers who they practice the cycling technique because I've harassed them to death. And they do the cycling technique, and they just wish me that I would shut up about it. And they bring textbooks, and they read while they do it. So they're not oming out, they're not going into a crazy altered state, they're not doing anything like that. That may be happening, but as far as they know, they're reading a textbook.
So the
Incidentally, if you'd like to learn how to do it, there's a CD set. I'm not hyping it. There's a CD set which drill and practices, and people listen to the CD set. They go out, they heal the sick, they raise the dead, all that kind of stuff, and then they write me hate mail going, "I ruined their life."
I think a lot
Because
of
now
our
what do you do? But quite seriously, what if you learn how to do this and you can do it? And what happens if you fix a person? What generally happens is the volunteers, they cure some mice, they don't know what to do. They start flopping on the floor, and then they sneak around, they try it on some people. And what happens if the people get better?
Hmm.
That didn't make their life better. The people who got healed, it did. But the healer, now what do you do with that? What's my obligation? What are the boundaries? What are the ethical considerations? It's not a simple problem. And so I say, here's the technique. It's public. Use it.
Beautiful. I think a lot of our listeners would be very interested in that. We have a technique that we teach people to get into the alpha brain state, and then connecting into that higher level of gamma and crystallining it, say, in the quantum field. And this is just all through learning and creative and doing this ourselves. And I feel like it could be a similar vibration that you're connecting your method on a frequency like a radio station to rapidly create these thoughts. And I feel like that could be maybe.
It could be. It could be. I don't know what gets it from here to there. Maybe it's because we're not really separate. Maybe it's because we can set up a resonance that we don't quite understand now. Maybe it's because something else is transmitting, and I don't have anything that'll really explain it.
Wow.
I can tell you that there's, frequencies in the brain. Again, we've looked at that in some detail. I've gotten brains to go into resonance, and it's measurable resonance. So we put a bunch of electrodes on me and a bunch of electrodes on you, and you're in Australia and I'm in New York, and I'm targeted, and I say, okay, now do it, and I go into whatever happens to my brain. Yours goes into a perfect resonance with my brain. You don't know it. You're not going down the street going, oh, there he is again. You're just walking down the street, and what happens is you go into a particular frequency, and then our brains go into a phase lock.
Mm,
It's reasonably interesting.
mm. So tell
Yeah.
us some profound healing treatments that just stand out in your mind that you could share with us. Is there anything?
Stories.
Stories. We love hearing stories about the healing qualities.
Well, the stuff I'm most interested in now, I'm looking at, we'll call it phase one of healing, and that is to make sure you establish it beyond any reasonable doubt or even unreasonable doubt. And so I've done that for 100 years. And then I looked at correlations, and I got a boatload of correlations. It's not this, it's this. This correlates, this doesn't correlate. And so it's kind of looking at it like just any other physical system that you'd be looking at. The second and third stages of healing research, anyway, I think are storage and scaling. And that's what I'm working on right now. The storage and scaling of healing. The storage, can we take, I don't know what we want to call it, intention, and put it into something? And can we harvest it later? And scaling, can we mass produce it? And so there aren't a lot of people working on these parts, but I've got some reasonably interesting data. So I've looked at what can you do and what can you store it in. And so, for example, glass of water. What happens if you hold a glass of water, do the cycling stick, intend to put whatever you want into the water, and incidentally, I am doing it right now. So I don't need to go, solemn on you, sacred on you. You can watch TV, read a book, do what you want to do. And the stuff just kind of happens automatically. What happens if I, for example, take this water and I feed it to cancerous mice that I've never met? So all they're doing is when they're drinking water bottles, they drink as they need water. What happens to them? From me holding, and this we did at University of Connecticut Medical School, me holding water and feeding it to mice that I don't know and don't treat or don't do anything like that, that cures the mice too.
Mm.
Now that's reasonably interesting. We take cotton. I don't have any cotton here, but we take ordinary cotton, fluffy cotton, all that stuff, and you hold a piece of cotton and you bring some cancer cells in vitro in a test tube. Bring some cancer cells near the treated cotton versus you bring it near untreated cotton. If the cotton's untreated, nothing happens to the cancer cells. As the cancer cells get near the treated cotton, they genomically start to flip. So we've looked at genomic changes in cotton when it's brought near treated cotton. We've looked at genomic changes in cancer cells when it's brought near, you get the idea.
Mm.
So it turns out it can be stored in a variety of stuff. So it can be stored, I don't know what the limits are, but we've stored it in, for example, and this is University of California at San Diego, in the liquid that you put into, we'll call it a test tube or a well plate. It's actually a well called a well plate. And the cancer cells are grown in that, and we want to see what happens to the cancer. What happens if I treat the cell medium, not the cancer cells? And I ship it across the country, and they pour a bunch of cancer cells into the medium as they do in, a zillion experiments, what happens to the cancer cells? Well, it turns out they increase in their growth by an average of 600%. That's not subtle.
Mm.
So the cancer leaps out of, eats the techie in the lab. They're not happy. Uh, it grows wildly. Now, why would it grow? That's one of the few hypotheses I've ever gotten right. I predicted if we treat cancer cells in a mouse, the cancer would implode. If we treat cancer cells in a tube, who's your client? Your client is cancer. What does cancer like to do? It likes to reproduce. What are you trying to do? Give the thing what it wants. Healing is the transfer of whatever the healee needs.
Uh-huh.
Cancer has a need to grow. If you put it into a mouse, it should collapse. We haven't done the second part yet.
So if cancer patients hung out all together, is that multiplying the cancer within the people potentially? Is that what
No,
I just
no,
read
No,
from that?
no.
Because
no.
there's a consciousness within the person.
Well, I think that the healing need goes to the higher order need of the organism.
Right.
If you've got a mouse with cancer, we're trying to fix the mouse. If you've got cancer as cancer, it's not hurting anybody. It's just sitting here multiplying in a tube.
Yeah.
If you put it into a mouse, we got a problem. If you put it into
Mhm.
a person, we got a problem.
So,
Healing
Bill,
gets rid of the problem, and so transferring it to a body, the body would be the higher order need.
Mm.
so could it be almost said that there is no, in this case, cancer's not bad. It's only bad if you've got it, of course. It's just a thing. It's part of the universe, and everything in the universe has got its place, and it does what it does. It's like mosquitoes are bad when they're buzzing around you, but to the mosquito, they're just living their life. So, in
They're
other
just
words,
having a meal.
yeah. So, a cancer in someone else is affecting the person's free will to be in balance and be what they are. But the cancer itself in the test tube is just doing its
Hanging
thing.
out. It's hanging
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And if you're fixing cancer, you're implying it's bad. It is bad in a mouse or it is bad in a person, but I don't think anybody's ever been found who doesn't have cancer. And this is usually extrapolated from very young people who die in accidents and things like that. So you get 16-year-old kids who die in a car crash, and upon autopsy, they have cancer.
Mm.
Everybody has cancer cells in them. It's not a disease, it's just cancer cells. We also have a ton of bacteria in you. You also have a ton of viruses in you. You couldn't live without viruses. You don't like certain ones, but you got to have some viruses, and a good part of our anatomy depends on viruses and bacteria and a bunch of other stuff in order to function properly. You have fewer human cells in you than you have non-human cells.
Mm.
We don't want to get rid of everything that's not human because that gets rid of you.
So, can a
So what
person
happens
use?
in a body is I got cancer. That doesn't mean I have a disease. It means I have cancer cells. And if they get nasty, the immune system, all the things being working properly, gets rid of it. And so what does the immune system do? It gets rid of a ton of stuff. Some of the cancers, not all the cancers. If the cancers turn nasty, we go after it. So you can sit here, you can be nice, but if you start to become aggressive, you're out of here.
Mm. Mm. Rate of
So we're not trying to
vibration.
fix cancer, we're trying to give health.
And can a person use this method on themselves?
Yeah, it's harder. One of the things that's part of it is detachment. And it's, you know, if you're in pain, you know, put your hands on the part that's in pain. It's hard to not take it personally. So the answer is yes, you can, but I'd advise getting help, you know. So if we can store healing in water, or we can store healing in cotton, or we can store, I'll just use those two as examples. What else? I mean, the research question is what else can you store it in? But then the second part of the question, phase three, is can we make it widely available? And so an example of making it widely available, a cotton as cotton is a beautiful surrogate for healing. I mean, you can stick it in an envelope, mail it to Australia, you take it out in Australia, you stick it on the person. It's like they had a hands-on treatment. It really is remarkable stuff. But it's not scalable. There's an inexhaustible supply of people in pain. How do we make it scalable? So we've played around, and we've come up with a couple things. One, we're playing with recordings. And so I have, and this is all published in academic journals, you know, with geeky scientists and all that. We in a big Faraday cage, like 12 foot by 12 foot, three people. One was me, one was Margaret. I won't give you away the third. The three of us went into a Faraday cage, holding a piece of cotton, which we know produces a healing response. And we ran 38 detectors in the Faraday cage. Is something that screens out electromagnetic energies. So you have a purity of what's left. I both live, the very fact that we're on Zoom, we live in a electromagnetic soup, which is probably not good for us at all. Faraday cage, you couldn't run Zoom. Nothing, you're not going to get the crap through, and you get into this. Actually, it's an incredible experience. You get into a Faraday cage and you just go, what? It's like profound quiet. Even though there's no acoustic shielding, it's profound quiet. So we didn't, since we don't know what we're doing, we decided to throw the kitchen sink at it. We got 38 detectors of different stripes, scalar field detectors, electromagnetic this, geomagnetic that, and 38 detectors. And we had three people inside the cage holding a piece of cotton, doing the cycling, and charging the cotton while we ran the 38 detectors. We ran it through a water process supercomputer because it's a big data file, and reduced it to a WAV file, and then we play that WAV file to cancer cells or cancerous mice. And the question would be, does it replicate? So we did it first with cells, and again, this is in a biology journal. We did it first with cells, and the results are remarkable. And I'm not exaggerating. They're remarkable. We looked at 167 genes in an incubator, or of cancer cells in an incubator, and we play this recording, and then we look at the genomics of the stuff in the cancer cells in the incubator, and it turns out 68 of them reliably change. Why these 68? I don't know. This is done at Brown University. 68 genes change. We did it 7 times because we didn't believe the results. Because again, I'm a skeptic. But you know, even the skeptic, you have to, after a while, you just go, well, dang. What in heaven's name is going on? So then we did it to mice. And the mice, the tumors explode, ulcerate, do the stuff they're not supposed to do. Spleen weight increases by 5-fold. You know, I mean, we get some really nutty stuff. Now, my point now is not that we get nutty stuff from the recording, but if we could make the recording as good as hands-on, and it's not quite as good yet. So we've done comparisons side by side. How long does it take to produce genomic changes? And what if we just used a recording? And it turns out hands-on is still a little stronger than this recording. But it's a technology that we're working on, like you try to figure out a jigsaw puzzle. We just came out with a new version of the recording that I'm testing actually right now in Providence, to see if it's stronger than the last one, to see if it's equal to the hands-on. If it's equal to the hands-on, I can upload it into the cloud. Anybody in the world, you want it, take it.
Amazing.
That's scaling. So we'd have it stored electromagnetically, and we have it in the cloud, and we'd have worldwide distribution. If we do this with water, we've invented a gizmo. Gizmo's a technical term. We've invented a gizmo that will reproduce water with the intention in it. So we've taken water, again, ordinary water, done the little hocus pocus stuff, stuck it into a device that reproduces virtually unlimited amounts of water. And we've done some clinical studies. We did three clinical studies, 2 in Europe and 1 in the States, about 100 people each. And the results were ridiculous. I mean, they were just ridiculous. 98% of the people said they received some significant help. Everybody wants more of this stuff. Everybody wants more of this stuff. And so this happened and that happened, and the people were depressed or not depressed. The bipolar people are giving up their meds. I mean, I don't believe this crap. It's too much.
Wow.
We took it and did it formally, and I just finished publishing a piece again in the Geeky Journal, that double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized study of people going into a COVID hospital. They didn't know what they were getting. They took 2 drops under the tongue of our hocus pocus water. No human has ever touched it. 2 drops under the tongue, 6 times a day. The doctors administering this didn't know what was in there. Some people got water. Some people got hocus pocus. Some people got. We blew away the medical model. It's not even close.
Wow.
COVID goes away. It's interesting. Now, if we can get this out,
beautiful work.
Yeah.
we can scale it. If I have a piece of cotton, I don't know how to scale it yet.
Yeah.
Meaning I've got cotton with potential, but that doesn't mean, what if 100,000 people want a piece?
Yeah.
If 100,000 people want water, I can do that simply. I mean, that's not hard for me to do. But it's harder for me to do water right now. We're working on it to scale it. What if 1 million people want it? What if 20 million people want it? Well, you can see if the recording works, I have no limit. If 1 billion people want it, hit download.
Bill, is the recording like a white noise, or is there a sound with it?
No noise.
No noise. Yeah.
Most of the not the good, the anomalous frequencies are very low, below human hearing. So they're in the range of 3.5 to 5 hertz. And we don't have the ability to hear 3.5 to 5 hertz. And the interesting thing is our speakers, which we had in the incubator, and our amplifier, which we had near the incubator, can't play those frequencies either, yet it still works. Which means the phenomenon is real, the phenomenon works, the phenomenon is reliable, but I don't know how it's working. One of the guys on my team has a PhD in signal analysis. Go figure. And I just got through going 75 pages of technical mumbo jumbo, and at the end you call him up and go, "You have no idea what's going on, do you?" He goes, "No." There's nothing this shouldn't work, but it works.
So, Bill, with your rapid visualization, is there certain like pegs or anchor points that you're teaching? Like, what type of visualizations are you helping people to anchor in for the intention of the healings?
The intention isn't the healing, the intention is to be entirely selfish. I think healing should be a selfish act for both the healer and the healee. And I think cycling is all about selfishness. And that's actually one of the side benefits of it. You kind of learn about what you really want. So you've always wanted, you fill in the blank. And when you start to visualize it and cycle through it, it doesn't work. And there's guideposts that'll tell you it doesn't work. And if you change your images, suddenly it starts to speed up. And that means, yep, that's really you. So
Mm.
you're supposed to want, I don't know, a fancy car.
Yeah,
I'm not a car guy, but
I
let's
know where
say
you're
it's
going. Pictures
yeah.
or
So
pure intent. Yeah.
yeah. Why give me a good car? What should I want if I
Uh,
have
Porsche, I guess.
okay a Porsche? Okay, so I want a blue Porsche. I don't even know what colors they come in. I want a red. So I got a blue Porsche, and that goes onto my cycling list. And I have other selfish things. It's all about you. And I'm going through those images, which are constructed as if they've already happened. So I'm driving my Porsche down the street. have it in my garage. It's in the front lawn. I don't care. But I got a Porsche. If you can cycle the Porsche and it works and the cycling becomes effortless, we've tapped into something that you really want. If I put a Porsche on my list, it would come to a crashing halt because I don't really care. I know I'm supposed to have one. I know only people who have arrived have one. I know anybody who doesn't have one is a loser, but I don't want one anyway. My list wouldn't work with a Porsche on it. And you are supposed to come up with at least 20 things that are yours, selfishly yours, that you really want. And they can be relationships, as long as it doesn't involve another person without their permission. It can be relationships, it can be things, it can be traveling, it could be. And when you tell people, you got to have 20 things, and 20 is not a magical number. The record's 94, incidentally. But when you say you got 20 things, people will, yes, total selfish person.
That's a
That's a
lot of things
compliment.
on a list.
Yeah, that's a compliment when I call you selfish. You got 20 things on your list. You got 20 images that you burn into your brain, and then you go flying through them as you're doing other stuff. It's hard at first, just like any new skill is hard at first, and you start out mindfully trying and stumbling and falling and do all that, and then finally you becomes effortless.
Mm.
Healing is mindless. All ways that you have achieved some sort of mastery, you've become mindless. Mindful will crash a system. Pick any walking. When you're a little kid, take a step, they plop, take a step, plop, take a step, plop. And then one day, transition, what? Mindless. I can run. I can do this. And you can never again remember how not to do it as long as you don't think about it. If you think about it, you're going to fall
Mm-hmm.
because it's stupid walking. You're walking around these little pegs. It's ridiculous to think about it even, but we just mindlessly do it unless you have a problem and then you're mindful. And if you're mindful, you're not as good as if you're mindless. When you're playing tennis mindlessly, you have to work your brains out to get the skills, to get the strokes, but you want to transition to mindless.
Mm.
So the teaching is cycling and teaching you to be extremely selfish and extremely mindless. And again, I got drill and practice CDs that you can get, and they're cheap, teach you how to do it. And at the end, you can run off and do this and do it for yourself.
I love it.
How do people find out about those, Bill? I'm sure they'd be very interested to learn more about your technique. Please share.
Well, I've got a boatload of stuff on a website. I think Margaret does the website. Again, I just found out about this internet thing. So there's a website, bengstonresearch.com. Bengston Research is one word, bengstonresearch.com. And there's stuff, there's workshops, there's drill and practice stuff. There's papers on if you want to see geeky things, if you want to see, if you're into serious geek, I can take you down a rabbit hole in this thing. Um, I've written a book, The Energy Cure, which I didn't like because I don't like the word energy. Uh, and so the bengstonresearch.com, I haven't played on it, but I think Margaret's put about 35 or so papers on, plus here's what we're doing next, plus, plus, plus. We also have communities that get together. We're getting together sometime in September, I think, to do a group cycling. So there'll be hundreds of people signed up, and we're all going to do it together. And sometimes we record that with our cell phones, so we play it back and we see what kind of healing we get. So the goal is to get this out, get it all over the place, and see what we can do with it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on our show today. It's been very insightful, and certainly excited to learn the technique ourselves and heal each other and see what happens.
Once you start, you're going to send me hate mail because it's annoying at first.
Be very proud of the contribution you're making to humanity. I know you don't like to take too much credit for your hard work, but all those years of work and
111 years, yeah, that's right.
People, you've helped tens of thousands of people, known and unknown. So, allow that to go into you, and keep it up, Bill. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words. And thanks for the invitation.